This lesson's over the quadratic formula. We did quite a bit of it in class today, so let's look how this works. Do you remember this question from class? We factored it, hopefully you have it in your notes, to x plus 3, x minus 2, and so x equals negative 3 and x equals 2. And we looked in our calculator and we saw that the parabola crossed at negative 3 and 2, and we had our calculator figure that out for us. Okay, so remember that, and we'll keep that kind of to the side over here. There we go. Now, let's do this by the quadratic formula. Do you remember the quadratic formula we said in class? Let's write it down. X equals a negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2 times a. Remember that? Have that memorized. In fact, on the way in the room tomorrow, tell me that. Then I'll know you watched the video and you have it for memory. So I'll be really happy. So on the way in the door tomorrow, say, hey, Miss Fillers, the quadratic formula is, and repeat it to me, and I'll know you watched the video and you have it for memory. Okay, here we go. Let's use it. This goes from standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So we obviously need to know what a, b, and c are so we can fill them into the quadratic formula. A is the number in front of x squared. We don't have a number in front of x squared, so our a must be that invisible 1. Same thing with b. It must be 1. And then c, be careful here because notice there's a plus in the formula. If I made mine plus, it would be plus negative. So c is negative 6. Here we go. X equals a negative b. We have a positive 1 for b, so we have to put a negative 1 plus and minus the square root of b squared. Whoops, I want to fill in my b. The b is 1. Put parentheses. You always need to put parentheses around it when you're going to square it because the calculator has to have, especially if b is negative. If you don't put that negative in parentheses before you square it, it's going to give you the wrong sign. Minus 4 times a is 1, times c is negative 6, all over 2 times a, and a was 1. Okay, this is pretty simple math, so we can probably do this without our calculator. Negative 1 plus or minus the square root. So we're going to do the stuff under the radical. By the way, the stuff under the radical sign is called the discriminant. The 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 6 is the discriminant. And we'll talk more about that later. But 1 squared is 1. Now, do you see the negative times the negative here? That's going to turn to a plus sign or a positive. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 6 is 24. 1 plus 24 is 25. So under the radical, we have a 25. Hey, I know the square root of 25. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus, what's the square root of 25? 5 over 2. Pause the video if you need to. Slow down and write that down. Okay, well, I obviously know how to add these together. I'm going to go off into the 2 branches now. Negative 1 plus 5 over 2 and negative 1 minus 5 over 2. Okay, well, what's negative 1 plus 5? Well, that's 4 over 2. So we have a 2 there. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 over 2. That's negative 3. So look, there's our 2 answers that we had earlier today. Remember right here? Let's pull them down. Oops. Let's pull these down here that we had earlier in class. Notice we have x is negative 3 and x is 2 in our parabola. So that's how the quadratic formula works. Well, why do I need the quadratic formula? I factored that a long time ago. It was very easy. Well, because not everything's factorable. Remember this one from class we did today? It didn't factor, remember? So we put it in our calculator. I have the answers right down here for you highlighted. So we got those 2 answers. So how would I get the exact version? In other words, with a square root answer and not that estimated decimal. So we're going to have to use the quadratic formula for that. Okay, here we go again. What is A? Hope you said 1. What's B? It's 6. And what would C be here? That would be 7. Okay, here we go. Quadratic formula. Let's write it again to help our memory. X equals a negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, here we go. X equals a negative b. So we have a negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6, put it in parentheses, square it, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 7, all over 2 times a, which was 1. Okay, so x equals a negative 6 plus or minus the square root. Let's take that discriminant over here. 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 7. Well, this is 36 take away 28. What is 36 take away 28? Isn't that 6? No, that's, let me make sure I did that right. 36 take away 28 is 8. Okay, where were we? I paused for a second. 36 minus 28 is 8 over 2. 8 over 2. Okay, so here we go. X equals negative 6 plus or minus. We need to simplify that radical. Let's come over here. What's the square root of 8? Well, that's 4 times 2, and this is 2 times 2. So this is 2 square roots of 2 over 2. Does this simplify some more? Why, yes, we can triangle reduce that. So we get 2 goes into 6, negative 3, plus and minus 1 square root of 2. Now think that through for a second. Pause it and look at that simplifying. And now let's check. We have negative 3 plus the square root of 2. Let's check that in a calculator. Negative 3 plus the square root of 2. Let's see what decimal we get for that. Negative 1.5. Is that what we got in class earlier? Yes, it is. Negative 1.585. Good. Now let's look at the other one. Look what I'm going to do. Push second, enter, and it'll pop that back up. I'm going to switch. Now we need negative 3 minus the square root of 2. Let's put that in our calculator. Push enter. That's negative 4.414. Is that what we had in class today? Negative 4. Yes, it is. So these give, this is the exact answers. You can write it like this, all connected, or if you like to, you can separate it out. Negative 3 plus the square root of 2 and negative 3 minus the square root of 2, whichever one you like, I don't care. And if you notice, that does match the decimals we got earlier in class. Excellent. Okay. Let's do one more question. One more, and then we'll be done. Okay, last one. Look at this one. This one's a mess because it's not in the correct standard form. We have to get this in standard form. In standard form, the squared comes first. So let's put our negative 5x squared out here at the front. It needs to equal 0, right? So let's subtract this 2x over. I'm going to put it under the 8x because those are like terms. So we end up with negative 10x, and then we have our plus 3 equals 0. So before you can do the quadratic formula, it has to be in descending order. Descending means the highest exponent down to no exponents at all. See how I have x squared, and then the next is an x. Next term just has an x. And the next term doesn't have an x at all. That's descending order. And it has to be set equal to 0 like we did with the rational zero theorem. Okay, here we go. X equals, first of all, what is A? A is negative 5. B is negative 10. Got to be careful when B is negative. And C is 3. Here we go. X equals a negative B. So we have a negative 10. That's going to turn to positive, isn't it? We'll do that in a minute. Plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared. Those parentheses are very important. Minus 4 times A, which is negative 5, times C, which is 3, all over 2 times A, which was negative 5. Okay, pause the video if you need to and look at that again. But let's get started. X equals, now what did we say? A negative 10 would be a positive 10 plus or minus a square root. Okay, let's take this thing I call the discriminant over here. So it's negative 10 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times 3. Well, what is negative 10 squared? That's 100. Those two negatives are going to make addition, because a negative times a negative is a positive. This one and this one make positive. And that's 20 times 3, that's 60. That's 160 to go under the square root. Ooh, mine's way too long. Let's erase that. All over negative 10. You agree? Okay. So here we go. Oops, we got to simplify that 160. Let's break that down. That would be 10 times 16. Ooh, I know the square root of 16 is 4. So let's do 4 times 4. Those match. This is 5 times 2. Those aren't going to match. Okay, so this is going to be x equals 10 plus and minus 4 root 10 all over negative 10. Okay, so can we reduce this one? Actually, I think we did this one in class today. So we can reduce this one. What does it reduce by? Well, it looks like a 2. So x equals 5 plus and minus 2 root 10 all over negative 5. Now, ultimately, I'm not going to want that negative in the denominator, but let's just leave it for right now. We'll let it sit there for right now. I'd also let you write this. We talked about this in class. We could also write this as x equals 5 over negative 5 plus or minus 2 square roots of 10 over negative 5. So that would be what? Negative 1 plus or minus negative 2. Just make this negative out. This negative 5, I'm just going to put here. Negative 2 square roots of 10 over 5. Now, we could do something with that negative, but we'll leave that. This is another way to write your answer. I don't care which one you do. So you could plug that into your calculator and see what the decimals are, and if you have time, plug the original question, actually this one right here, into y1, and in y2, put a 0, intersect them, and see if they come out to be the same. Okay, I'll see you in class tomorrow. Thank you for watching the video.